Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Conversations with Harsh. This is your host Harsh, and today we have Babar and Faizan from the Canadian Homeowner Solutions. They are active real estate investors with over 8+ years of experience in multiple strategies such as BRRRRs, conversions, flips, and wholesaling. They work across Ontario and New Brunswick at the moment. So we'd like to welcome Babar and Faizan. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, Harsh.
You're welcome. How have you been?
Good. Yeah, it's just like we were talking earlier, we just at the verge of finishing a few projects, and we're looking to take on a few more. So we have a few coming up right now. So it's always that exciting transition, right, between projects where you have a little bit of breathing room, but at the same time you're scrambling to get all the parts together for the new projects you have coming up. So we're in that middle exciting stage right now.
Absolutely. And considering, like, especially in these times, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
These are pretty exciting and interesting times that are going on in the real estate market. All right. So we'd like to start with we'd like to know your background, what made you come into real estate. I see that you are experienced in sales and management, been across multiple roles. What made you switch over to real estate and now being successful in these flips and conversions, and now you're also into land development, and now you're not even only focused in Ontario, but you're also doing deals in New Brunswick and looking at Alberta. So talk to us a little bit about your history and how did you get into real estate, or what got you into real estate?
I think we'll definitely share both our stories, both our journeys, and then there's a point of conversions where we come together and essentially take off our real estate careers in terms of developing a business around it. But in summary, like, my background is in sales and management. Have been in the corporate world for almost 18 years. And to me, real estate was more of an awakening. All right, I drank the corporate Kool-Aid. I always believed that climbing the corporate ladder is your ticket to financial freedom, is your ticket to the lifestyle that you want. But I was fortunate that much earlier on in my career, I experienced a few awakening calls that gave me the realization that your T4 income is a glass ceiling, or you trade your time in exchange for more money, or that title and that recognition. So real estate was that answer after a lot of soul searching. And in terms of why I became fully vested in it is when I started taking some education and coaching and mentorship, really understanding real estate investment as a business. And then since then, there's been a change of mindset. There's been a change of state in many, many different fronts, right? Financial, physical, emotional, ethical, right? You call it, from so many fronts, how this transformation has happened. And then Faizan and I, we came together and created Canadian Homeowner Solutions. And since then, we've done a lot, which I'm sure we're going to be touching upon in this podcast. But I wanted to pass it on to Faizan and share his background.
Yes, and before Faizan, you start, I'd also like to know, how did you two meet? Maybe after you're done.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll touch up on that a little bit, but like Babar, I was very much prescribed to the corporate Kool-Aid as well. When a long time back, I was in school, and I was studying engineering, and for the most part, when you're studying something like that, it's a very academic and very, very corporate level kind of career that you're headed towards, right? But then one summer I got into a sales job, and it was the only job I could find. It was full commission, no base pay or anything. So I was kind of forced to fend for myself. But that kind of started me on my journey towards more business and entrepreneurship, because there was a lot of talk of running your own business, and essentially you're fending for yourself, you're eating for yourself, a lot like any other business out there. So that kind of got me started in that mindset. And I was like, hey, you know what? I think as much as this is a lot more tough than being in a corporate job, I think I want to try this thing out. So I did that for a few years, and over the years, I entered a few different sales roles, and I've done a few different types of it now in a few different industries. Eventually, it was coming to a point where COVID came around, and I was in a client-facing role. Obviously, I couldn't see many clients during COVID, so my income declined rapidly over those years. And I had fortunately bought my first property in May 2020. And in 2021, obviously we saw what the COVID market did. So I had gained quite a bit of equity. And during that time, I was looking for ways to get out of what I was in at the time, right? My sales job at the time, I was just, trying this, trying that, putting one foot here, seeing if that works out, putting one foot there. And then eventually I was like, okay, you know what? This real estate thing, like I have some equity built up. Why don't I take a look and see how I can get involved? And I wanted to get involved then. So I'm like, being a realtor is not an option. I can't wait to, take my courses and all and get my license. I need to get involved now. So eventually I started looking into it. I hired a mentor, and they got me on the path of flipping properties. Helped me refinance my house, pull some equity out, and get started on my path. Now, through one of the mentorships that I joined after him, that's actually where Babar and I met. So we met at a networking event, and at the time probably thought nothing about it, in the summer of 2021. And thought nothing about it. We just had casual conversations. We were both working in the Niagara region, and we were like, hey, this market is tough right now in 2021. It's hard to find good deals. It's hard to source these deals, and we're always competing. How can we get above that competition and essentially, get around it, find our own leads, find our own properties? And we knew we didn't want to take on it alone because we were both busy in our own pathways. So we decided to kind of partner up. And initially it was just a few chats about, what can we do to start it and this and that. And then initially we're like, okay, you know what? We have to spend some money on marketing. If we're spending some money on marketing, let's actually get started seriously. So we formed a corporation together and we just started. And yeah.
Wow. Yes, you explain it in a very simple way. I'm pretty sure it was not like that. Completely not like that, right? But when you spoke about it, it sounds very, very simple, right? Because getting into a partnership is not that easy, especially nowadays.
Maybe I'll add some color there.
Yes.
Because you're right. Like, it is part call it science, part luck, part however you want to dissect it, right?
Yes.
But the essence was that when we came together, there was no predefined notion that we're coming together. You're going to do this, I'm going to do this. This is how a partnership is going to be structured. This is yours, this is mine. This is your roles and responsibilities. Like none of that, right? It was purely a merger of two forces. And then when we started chasing opportunities and when we started solving problems together and we started networking together, that is when things fell in place organically. So I think we were fortunate that we gravitated towards our strengths, and our strengths and weaknesses complement each other. So from that perspective, it really worked out. Where it's so much so of a compliment where now it's we like to use the word blind spots. So anytime I have a situation that I'm working on, I know I have a blind spot, and I'm going to call Faizan, and Faizan is going to uncover that for me, and vice versa.
Absolutely. This is what is needed from a partner. Absolutely. Well, congratulations, guys. You both met. And now I know you're doing a lot many deals. So which brings me to, like, you are now focused in Ontario and you're doing a lot of strategies, right? I want to talk about one of the couple of them actually. I know flip and wholesaling, but I want to touch more on the multi-conversion and land development. So in the multi-unit conversion, I know you're doing the small multi-unit conversion, but what kind of things are you doing in that conversion?
Good question. So with regards to conversions, we have a few different focuses. I'm going to take a step back a little bit and just add that it's also, we are building our portfolio with regular BRRRR projects as well. So if we find, decent BRRRR projects like triplexes, fourplexes that need minor renovations and that we can extract a lot of value out of. So, a little bit deeper criteria than just triplex or fourplex, but adding in the conversion aspect, we'll look for larger lots or places where we could add value, right? So that's one thing. Another is, for example, if we find larger properties where we're like, okay, this is an easy property for us to add multiple units to, whether it's, through an ADU or the basement and upstairs, or wherever we can find the space to add value into the property, we're looking to do exactly that, right? So to give you an example, we have two projects. One that's currently underway and almost completed, and one that we recently completed. One was a triplex already built, but it has a massive garage and it has an empty attic. So that's an easy fiveplex opportunity for us. It has a massive lot, so it's not that hard for us in the future to apply for the permits and build an ADU as well, right? So there's almost endless opportunities there. The other project, it's a large house, again, massive backyard. And the way it's kind of structured right now is there's a bit of a barrier between the front and the back. So we were like, hey, from our eyes, that's an easy duplex right there. And each side has their own basement. So that's an easy fourplex conversion. So that's going from, a single family house to a fourplex. And there's a massive lot in the back. So we have the opportunity that in the future, if we want to, we can convert or we can build an ADU and we can add additional units to that property as well. So those are projects that we're looking at, the smaller types of projects where it's simple conversions. We just find ways that we can extract the most value out of a property like that.
Wow. Babar, you like to add something on to that?
Yeah, I think just along the same lines is that the strategy in Ontario is really adding more units, right? Versus
Yes.
turning over tenants. And from that perspective, we're always looking at the highest and best use in light of certain bylaws that are also being rolled out, like Bill 23, right? Which municipality is more favorable for that additional units? Because at the end of the day, this is more of a play with the city and the building code, and everything else is calculated both in terms of time and money based on how that process will work. So we have to be very sensitive to what location and what city we are adding these density, because though that city has to be in favor of that and not against it.
Absolutely. There's a lot of thought, I know, it goes into that. It just looks easy from the outside, but on the inside, it's really, really hard. And sometimes it also happens that you think of something, it'll get through, but when you go to the city, they just deny it completely. And then we have to come up with more innovative ways to get around that to get it done. And that means more cost, more time, and that can really drain down the actual profits.
Absolutely. And just being sensitive to the fact that all our projects have joint venture partners on them.
Yes.
Right? So, we have a responsibility to not just carve out the exit strategy, but also to drive the ship, navigate, and make sure that if we have to pivot, we do that. One other strategy just to add on the small multifamily is, we're operating in municipalities that are supportive of short and midterm rentals. So that's another play that we are heavily invested in. because there's multiple benefits, right? Number one, we get to navigate the Ontario landlord-tenant board, right? Number two, we get to hedge the overall risk of any issues coming from long-term tenants, right? Number three, we enjoy higher returns for our joint venture partners through short and mid-term rental strategies. And number four, it's professionally managed, right? So we have a very close pulse on the repairs and maintenance and the capex of the asset. And then finally, when it's time to sell the asset, we can sell it vacant, right?
Wow.
So
Yes.
we're hitting multiple value propositions in our small multifamily strategy.
Wow. And since you spoke a little about the joint venture partners that you joint venture the deal with, what kind of typical returns are your investors, or are you delivering to your investors or joint venture partners? Just an estimated guess. I'm like not quoting you, but what kind of returns is someone expecting if they are investing with you on your deals?
So I think that's a really good question. It's very deal dependent, right?
Okay.
That's the best way to answer that. It's very deal dependent. It's very market dependent. It's a lot of things that go into something like that, right? So if it's a flip, for example, somebody may obviously, time is a factor there as well. A flip versus a conversion. Flips usually go by faster than conversions, right? So that's one thing. And then is it a project in the GTA? Is it a project in the Niagara market where we focus on? Where is the project itself? So things like that also kind of tie into what the expectations of the partners are.
Yes.
Besides that, there's also the type of partners, right? So some of our partners we have that say, hey, take our money for a few years. We don't need it right now. They just want straight returns. So that's private lending, right? Some of our partners, they say, hey, okay, maybe we have this plan for our money in the next 6 to 8 months or 1 year. So we want a shorter term project. And then we would have more flips for them. Besides that, some investors are like, hey, we want to grow our portfolio. We want to keep recycling this money, and we just want to keep growing our portfolio. So for something like that, it's more BRRRR projects, or for example, the short-term, mid-term rental strategy. It's a high cash flow strategy. Plus, we're doing a BRRRR on that project to begin with. So investors get majority of their capital out, if not all of it. And then it's a short-term rental, so they're getting high cash flow, so pretty good cash on their money after the fact, right? And those investors are okay with leaving some of their money in the deal. So it's very dependent on the type of deals that we have that we're working on, and like I mentioned, where they are, what type of project, etc., as well as what the partners themselves are looking for as well, right?
Okay. That's good answer. Thank you. I'd like to touch, since you have done a lot of deals, what has been the most challenging deal that gave you quite a lot of learning, that if you were to do it again, that is something that you'll either not do or not do it that way that you did it?
Yeah, again, good question. I mean, two projects come to my mind. One of them is that fourplex conversion that I just mentioned. And one of them is probably a flip project that we completed last year. The flip project is a quick one, so I'll just touch up on it. But it was essentially just one of those projects where we valued low-cost contractors, and we went, we wanted to make the place a little bit nicer than the rest of the competition in the market. So we put a little bit extra money, went a little bit higher on the renos and all. And I think it was most of our own money in the deal as well. So we weren't we didn't have as much of that stigma that we have investors' money in our mind or in our hand. So we were a little bit more carefree with how we went about things. And that bit us quite a bit because, contractor turned out to not be as organized as we wanted. Lots of issues with contractors. on that project, I think we actually went through 4 or 5 different contractors. So we had to hire and fire and hire and fire 4 or 5 different contractors.
Wow.
So that was, you know, an interesting project, obviously. Besides that, the fourplex itself, the project itself is still on its way. It's still underway.
Okay.
It has been delayed by a little bit because the city, so essentially what happened was we're used to dealing with that city, but the typical inspector that we deal with in the city, he had health issues. And so he left, and he's, you know, the city is typically easy to deal with. And the inspector that took his place ended up being a very strict inspector, complete opposite. So that turned the expectations of the municipality on its head. And what would have typically been like, okay, you know, this is how you want to do things. That's okay. Don't worry. You can do things this way. You can do things that way. This is grandfathered in, so don't worry. What would have typically been that type of progress turned around into, well, this needs to be done this way. This needs to be done that way. Resubmit your drawings here. Resubmit your drawings here.
Wow.
I wanna see this. I wanna see that. Don't move a step forward until I have given you my go ahead. So that essentially, you know, from a timeline perspective, not quite financially, but from a timeline perspective, flipped the project on its head. Where we got a huge approval about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where we're kind of trying to zoom through the project now and approaching the finish line. But before then, to get that approval, I think it took us like 4 or 5 months, and you know, resubmitting our drawings 4 or 5 times, and the city having to analyze them, approving them, this, that, whatever. So that's a project, if we had to go back and redo it, I think we might have maybe structured it a little bit differently to complete it in parts rather than go and eat the whole pie at one time in one bite, right? Or maybe we would have, you know, prepared a little bit better with including much more of a timeline, of a longer timeline than we had anticipated. Babar, I don't know
Wow.
if
Wow.
else there.
No, I think you really summed it up well. Like I think it's contractors and cities, right? Like it's the 2 C's that are the moving target over here.
Okay. So now coming using that scenario or case study, what would you think is more important when doing deals, and regardless of any kind of deal, right? Would you think it's getting the financing done, or the due diligence, or structuring the deal? Out of
So
these 3, which one do you think?
like all of the above. Like I think they all tie into each other, right?
No, yes, tying into each other is one thing, but like the most important thing that would you, if you spend more time and effort there, the rest too, because they tie in, they will automatically flow in
Right.
or follow.
Yeah, from a time perspective, I definitely say it's the due diligence that takes the bulk of the time, the bulk of the effort, and it's more upfront, right? Because you need answers, and then you need confirmations, you need validations, right? From whether it's your lender, whether it's you know, your lawyer that's going to validate how you structured a deal. So you know, there's a lot of heavy lifting done in the due diligence, right? And if it's done correctly, then to your point, it feeds into the deal structure, right? Because you know, essentially you have a vision of how you are going to enter and exit the deal. And you know, we have this conversation quite a bit, is when we underwrite the deal, we wear multiple hats. So you know, we'll wear a lender hat, we'll analyze the deal from a very like a requirements that the lenders look at. Then we'll look at where the investor hat, that hey, if I'm investing money in this deal, how does that money flow through the deal, and when do I get my capital back, right? Then we'll also wear our hats in terms of, hey, what happens if things don't go according to plan. So
Yes.
what is our pivot as well? So, sometimes it's contingencies, sometimes, it's buffer, but a lot of times, I think because we have done this a few times, it's also experience. So we can smell and sense something is brewing or it's about to happen, and either we get ahead of it, or if there's some issue that's burning, then we have to go run to it, right? We have to attack it head on. So it sounds a bit reactive, but in real estate, I don't recall any single project that we've done where we've just sat back and just seen the end result. It's always been a lot of active management.
Yes, yes, it always is. It always is. Okay, I want to touch now on the New Brunswick deal that you're working on. It's a multi-burr, right? You're doing a burr strategy on that New Brunswick one. So we'd like to know more about that particular deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is more than just a deal. It's more of how this deal creates an impact in the community. So this is in downtown St. John, a building that's currently exists. It's owned by the church, and we've had direct relationships with the bishop. So the seller of that building was the bishop. So that relationship was a huge aspect in us even embarking in this entire conversation. The vision of the church is to develop senior assisted care facility in place of that building. Why that? Because there's a huge demand for it, right? There's a
Yes.
hospital right across the building, St. Joseph's Hospital. There's a senior care business that runs inside the hospital. There's a wait list of about 150 seniors that live inside the hospital. I mean, it costs the hospital $400 a day to just for like housing them and doing basic housekeeping. So there's a huge demand of housing these seniors in clean residential living units that are affordable, that are accessible, and that are a one-stop shop for anything senior assisted care needs. So that's what we're doing, is we're fulfilling the vision of the church, and we're developing 25 units of senior assisted care. We're partnering with the business inside St. Joseph's Hospital that's going to run their senior care business inside our building. So it's a win on many fronts.
Wow.
This is a project where, to your earlier question, where the bulk of the time went was in the due diligence. So because of the great relationship that we had with the seller, we had the liberty and the time to do a lot of the due diligence upfront. So what that means is we worked with the city in advance of closing and develop the whole drawings that we're going to build the 25 units upon. Then we also went to a large construction contractor, which was part of the requirement from the lender. The lender was going to advance us a construction loan, but they're not going to just take any quote from
Yes.
a private contractor, right? They need some skin in the game. So, we partnered with one of the largest contractors in St. John, New Brunswick, and they are part of the lending application, meaning that they've provided us with a fixed and firm price, and they have terms and conditions, meaning that they're going to adhere to a schedule, and the lender is going to pay them directly based on the progress that they make for the renovations. So, as you can tell, there was a lot of work done upfront to have all these pieces fall into place. We have our financing approved on the buy. We have our financing pre-approved on the exit, which is the CMHC on the refinance. So all in all, I think it's a project which has a lot of support, has a lot of grants from the city, has a lot of grants from social development, has grants from New Brunswick Power, from New Brunswick Housing. So all these grants are a bonus. When we underwrite the deal, we're not factoring in all these additional incentives. They're just going to be windfall once we finish the project.
Okay, so because there are so many grants, does this the project fall under the affordable housing
Correct.
project?
Correct.
Okay.
We're going to be meeting the MLI Select program from affordability. So 5 of the 25 units will be affordable.
Okay.
We'll be meeting the accessibility requirements. We'll be meeting the energy efficiency requirements, because CMHC is considering this as a new build, right?
Okay.
So what's unique about a new build, because we're adding new rental stock to the
Yes.
market. So what new build means that the refi is going to be based on not an appraised value, which is based on your income and expense. It's going to be based on your cost value. So it's loan to cost. So if we put in $5 million in this deal, we have a pre-approval of pulling out 91% of that cost upon refi.
Okay. Wow. Yes. No, that's why because there are so many grants, and that does make it a very good candidate for 95% LTV, which is really good to know. Thank you very much. One last question that I have from my side is, any tips for the audience and viewers that you'd like to give from your experience if somebody is just getting started, or maybe has done a deal or two, is like a beginner in the game? So what would be your advice? That focus on that part first, rest all will follow.
Both of us will answer that, because I think we definitely have we're starting to see this trend a lot, where we're sharing our experience and we see the impact that is having on people's journeys.
Yes.
So it's about giving back, right? I think what I would say is that we've heard this a lot, that it's the mindset and it's action. So I'm not going to repeat that, but what I am going to stress upon is network, rub shoulders, and build relationships. That really opens doors, because people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So don't be behind your computer screen or consume social media content and not contribute to it, because attention is the new currency, and you have to play a very good game of winning at it. So people need to know who you are, what you're about, what your value system is, what your thought process is. So get out as much as you can.
Yes. Faizan.
Yeah.
Your thoughts. He's still thinking.
No, actually, it's funny you mentioned everybody says taking action, because I was going to be like, yeah, make sure you take action, but I have to rethink it now.
You can say the same thing, right? Because I think we've both seen the impact.
Yeah. One thing I'll say, one thing that I have noticed in this market especially is a lot of people complaining about the lack of deals, right? And one thing I'll say is good deals are formed, not found. That's something that we always come back to with regards to our thinking is, okay, if there's no, clear deal out there and present in front of us, how can we negotiate or structure a deal in a way where it does become a deal? So good deals are formed, not found. I will say take action, but take educated action right now. So, due diligence is key. Take educated action, and don't give up on every single deal where this doesn't look great right off the bat, so the deal is gone. No, work on something for a while. Again, due diligence, take action on it, work on it until you get to the point where there really is no way past whatever the objections or whatever the issues you're facing, and then move on to something else. But don't be quick to move on past everything and just be like, hey, there's nothing good in the market right now.
Yes. No, and for me, like, my thoughts are, before even taking action, getting into anything, get yourself educated, right? The first thing is get yourself educated, because I see a lot of newcomers, and they say, oh, we have seen so much. We have followed YouTube, we have followed the Facebook University, and Now we know each and everything, and they jump in the game, and suddenly real estate becomes bad, right? So that's an uneducated and uninformed decision that someone takes. And then real estate is not bad. It's the decision that you make turns out to be bad because the proper education was not there.
Absolutely.
And yes, action, nobody can defy that. If you don't take action, nothing will happen.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yes. All right. Okay, guys. I am done. I don't have any further question. I would really like to thank you for your time today. It was really awesome to speak with you. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.